This recording's done for the Guaymas Island Historical Society, and we're interviewing Andy Leech as a important member of our community and also as a veteran.
Okay.
So, and my name's Dawn Ashback.
Dawn.
So thank you, Andy, for being willing to share.
Dawn, I'm happy to. Thank you for inviting me to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, this is great. Well, you're important. I mean, my gosh,
hardly that,
you have
but-
quite a history. Yeah, of, no, he just was checking.
Okay.
So, when did you first come to Guaymas?
First came to Guaymas, years before we moved here. My wife and her family, the Monahans, had been coming here for a number of years prior to our having met. Our sister-in-law, Karen Monahan, lives over on West Shore. Her family bought their land here on Guaymas back in the 1920s.
Oh, for heaven's
So,
sakes.
yeah, they've been here for some time. And so when my wife's brother and soon-to-be, or eventually-to-be bride, would come here, they'd come too. And so, and then over the years, even before we had any land association with Guaymas, we'd come up here and visit at times. But that was after Veronica and I had met in Crete and so forth. So let's say a long time. Yeah. We moved here, as I'll say here later, actually physically moved here in the turn of the last century.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
1999.
Okay.
And before that, had been coming here frequently.
To West Beach.
Well, now actually, across the street, often there was a yellow house that was near the ferry landing on this side. That was where the lower parking lot, and then there was the upper parking lot eventually.
Yes.
Before there was that upper parking lot, there were a couple of houses there.
Okay.
One of them was a small house, and that's where we would stay occasionally. Or we'd go camping over at the place where we purchased land over on South Shore Road. So.
Okay. Well, I forgot about that, those houses down there.
That's right. Those were, both of them were removed to expand the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
It's another muddy mess.
Yes, indeed it was.
Okay. So, the Monahans, were they farmers? Were they loggers? Were they?
Well, they were, what shall I say? They were folks who, they were neither. They weren't farmers, they weren't loggers. I won't call them investors either. Gotta be careful about the words that I use to describe people on Guaymas Island. It's a sensitive issue. But they had a summer home up here, would come up and visit during various seasons.
Right. Okay, so they didn't live here full time?
Don't believe so.
Okay.
Don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so did they have friends? Were they part of the community down there? If maybe they didn't know many people because they were just...
Honestly, I don't know. I can't say
Okay.
the answer to that because, that would have been something that, you would have known if you'd lived here as a kid.
Right.
Who the friends were on the island.
Yeah, because there weren't that many people, because Bud's family came here in '24. And so it sounds like the Monahans
It was about
came-
the same time.
Yeah, so they,
Actually, it was not Monahan. It was my sister-in-law's family.
okay,
She married
a Monahan.
Monahan.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it was your sister-in-law's family that first had it?
Yes.
So Monahan wasn't the first owner of the
No,
property?
Monahan was not. It was, I'm sorry, but names I'm not all
Okay.
that good with. That's why I wrote some things
Okay,
down.
okay. I think that one of our people, Bill Van Flack, he's got a plat map. We'd be able to find out who that was.
Well, I know all I would have to do would be to ask Karen Monahan.
Okay, she could probably tell you.
What the name of her family was.
Okay. So you've been here since 1999. So what do you like the best about being here?
Well, when you get to this side and they draw up the moat, it's like living on your own, on a lovely, separate, nice, quiet, secluded place to live.
You can leave all that over there.
Leave it all over there.
I agree. I agree.
That's what I like about it most.
Yeah, I think that's pretty special.
Yeah.
Yeah, That's how I felt when I would get in the car and get on the ferry.
When you would finally get here, it would drain away.
Yeah, I was a school counselor at the high school, so it's like I talked to people all day.
And it was nice to be quiet for a while.
Yeah, and come home, nobody could drive by and drop in.
Right.
Okay, so so anyway, we were interviewing you because you're a veteran, and can you just share?
Sure, I can share a lot of things with you. In
Like
fact,
what branch you were in?
Oh, absolutely. It'll
Okay.
all be there. It'll
Okay.
all be
All
there.
right,
In
then.
fact, probably in greater detail than you have any interest in hearing. You'll nod off and be sure to turn off the machine, and I'll leave when
You
it's
go,
over.
Andy.
Okay. Well, because my military time, the prologue for that, of course, has to be growing up. And I was born in Delaware, the other side of the
wow.
country, in 1947, November 47. My father was a clergyman, an Episcopal priest. No, he wasn't at the time. Yeah, he was then at the time, but he had been a Baptist minister as well prior to that. And my mother, Mary Dane Corey, was she was a dietitian. And while she was going to school in the Chicago area, my father was minister at a Baptist church up in Baltimore. And they met, and then that piece is history. I'm one of 5 sons, no daughters. Yeah. My oldest brother and my youngest brother, sadly, are dead. And then my remaining older and remaining younger brother are still with us.
You're the middle child.
I'm the middle kid, and so what you get. My early days were spent in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Rehoboth Beach and Lewis. And then as the church does, it moves their clergy from place to place. And so we moved to Evanston, Illinois, and then down to Garland, Texas.
Oh, my.
And ultimately to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I went off to college at an Episcopal school, the University of the South, Sewanee, Tennessee. It was an interesting place. It still, in some aspects, lived in the post-Civil War era. I mean, it was, they're adjusting these days. I graduated in the 100th class to graduate from Sewanee, and it was the last day that the students were all male.
Oh.
The year after I graduated, women arrived on the mountain.
Missed that.
I missed that one, for better or for worse, whichever. My Air Force years then began, because I had been in Air Force ROTC in college, began in 1969, and I was in the Air Force for 30 years, from 1969 to 1999. So it was a good long time.
Yeah.
A period that saw me go from second lieutenant to colonel. So good range, good run there. Started off being in something that I ultimately did not particularly like, and that was Minuteman missiles. I sat in a silo under the Missouri sod for 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 12 hours on. So it did not continue in perpetuity, 36 hours, away from home.
Wow.
And it was, as is often used to describe the experience, hours of sheer boredom accentuated by moments of, momentary panic. And, to kind of demonstrate that was, and I think it was something that I had mentioned when we had spoken before, and that was a day, probably during the fall, when we had pretty phenomenal thunderstorms and so forth in Missouri. And lightning struck somewhere near the missile facility where my other crew member, compatriot, and I worked, trying to stay awake. And it was early in the morning, and all of a sudden, all of the alarms went off that said something was going very much awry. And it was one of the indicators that showed that one of our 10 missiles had gone launch in process, which was definitely not an indication that you ever wanted to see. Now, I will say this, our missiles were on timers when they would actually launch. It wasn't just a matter of pressing a button. It wasn't pressing a button at all. It was turning a key, 2 simultaneously, different people. That would set that process underway. And at that time, then, a timer would start. And so we had no idea at that moment, knowing what timer this missile, and it showed which one it was of our 10, which missile was counting down to an accidental World War III. Poof, yes. And so, of course, there are many emergency things that we did and other launch control centers adjacent to ours did, which was to, attempt to inhibit the launch. And I will say we didn't see the indications that we had hoped to see. Things just marched along. And subsequently, we became aware of what the timer actually was, and it was a good long one. And so we called our command post, of course. I was in the Strategic Air Command at the time, and you never did anything without consultation with the higher up. And so what ended up happening, not to belabor the point, was they, the command post, sent out a maintenance crew that ultimately went down below into the missile silo. Very brave men. They were men at the time, to defuse the thing, to turn it off. And the people that drew the shortest straw were the security police, who were told to drive out in their pickup truck to the launch site and prepare should the concrete plug on the missile silo blow open to drive their truck, or push it if they could, down into the silo.
Oh my gosh.
And so they were prepared to do that.
Ooh.
Thank God, none of that happened.
That was their safety measure?
Well, that and send out the crew, and all the other safety measures had not
worked.
Had not worked.
Oh my God.
So at least they had a good,
Adequate.
albeit
We'll call
somewhat
it adequate.
adequate, backup plan. So yeah, that was probably one of the more interesting times that I had when I was in the military, and that was on my first assignment.
What year was that?
That would have been probably in the, let's see, not 69, probably 70, 71, 72, somewhere in that time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but that worked out. Then I decided this was not the way that I wanted to spend my military career. And it was at that time that I decided, I think I enjoy this, but I would enjoy it a heck of a lot more if I did something other than
Watch.
watching for hours. And so that's when I got into the intelligence business.
Oh.
And so I then was in the intelligence business for the following 26 years.
Can I ask you, if you
Yeah.
wanted to make that change, how did, you were allowed to do that?
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
did you have to test to get into it, or?
No. And this was interesting too. As I was coming up on 4 years in the missile business, the Air Force, flew a number of us officers down to the Air Force Personnel Center down in San Antonio, Texas, where we had an opportunity to talk to career advisors and
Okay.
counselors and say,
So they gave you the opportunity?
they gave us that
Yeah.
opportunity to
Nice.
do that, yeah. They didn't really want people staying in that direct contact with thing for more
'Cause
than
you could
4
go.
years. One could, yeah. And so I went down there and I talked to an intelligence recruiter, and there we go, a recruiter. And we talked about getting into the intelligence business, and he said, gee, I think I can help you there. I am an intel officer myself. I think you'd enjoy it, but I can't tell you anything about it because it's classified. Well, this was a major, and I ended up working for him as a colonel, and then again as a brigadier general when he was a colonel and a brigadier general. So, Charlie Bishop, great guy. So that's in answer to that question, I think,
Yes.
in elaboration. So I then got into signals intelligence. Signals intelligence, at the time at least, and bear in mind I've been out for coming up on 24 years, 25 years. The focus that I had was what we called signals intelligence, where you listen to enemy communications, And so that could be voice communications, it could be electronic intelligence, it could be computer to computer these days,
Yeah. Who knows?
other things,
Yeah.
like that. So in any event, so I went to training in San Angelo, Texas, back in 1974. And my first assignment was one of the best, and that was at Heraklion Air Station, Crete,
Oh, yeah.
Crete, Greece. And, I arrived there at a period where the world was undergoing endless conflicts another conflict between the Israelis and their Muslim neighbors. Nothing is new.
Yeah.
Nothing is new, and that wasn't new at the time.
Yeah.
But the highlight of that assignment was where I met my fiancée, Veronica Monahan, and we got married during the course of the tour. The requisite number of months elapsed, and our son was born, Roger. Roger was born up in Wiesbaden, Germany, the Air Force base up there, because the hospital where Veronica worked, I failed to mention she was also active duty. She was a nurse. Was a 3-bed hospital that did not include,
Oh, obstetrics?
obstetrics. Yeah. So in any event, our son Roger was born up in Wiesbaden. Roger, interestingly, just retired 6 months ago from the Navy after 24 years as a pilot, helicopter
Oh,
pilot.
my. Woo.
And so he's
Helicopter pilot.
back here looking for those good things. He's going to try to get a job with one of those medevac flights.
Oh, lovely.
So that would be good to, no, it would not be good to see him, but be good to have him out here.
Yeah,
That's
good
right.
place for him.
Yeah. And after that assignment, that lasted about 2 years, in 1976, I came back to the United States with a 6-week-old son and his mother, my wife, and went to the National Security Agency,
Oh,
which is the center of all things signals intelligence. You've probably heard of them before. And I was in an intern program there from 76 to 79, which gave me a really great opportunity to get up to speed and to, in fact, get over speed in some cases in many of the aspects of the signals intelligence business.
wow.
And so that was a great experience. It was also, as I think back on it, the first time I'd heard the name Osama bin Laden. And that was sometime between 76 and 79.
That long ago.
Okay. Then I, for better or for worse, went off to Headquarters Air Force, just down the road at the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. And I was there from 79 to 81. It would normally have been 82. But I really lucked out there because there were 2 particular highlights of my tour at the Pentagon. One was the birth of our daughter, Megan Ann, and Megan lives up in Bellingham. She's an RN.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And she was just down here yesterday, or on Sunday. And I also was able to leave the Pentagon early. Instead of 4 years, did it in 3. Yeah. But they figured I had suffered enough. Then went back to,
Now, what
Yes.
made it hard there?
very intense.
Yeah,
The Pentagon is a very intense place to work.
okay.
People would put in extremely long hours. It was not uncommon for many to have to go in on weekends, and do a lot of work there. Just a great deal of pressure
Yeah.
to get things done, and that hasn't improved any, I suspect. Although I will say the general that we worked for in my directorate insisted that people not work on weekends.
You lucked out.
Yep, and he actually would walk around, he would come in on weekends, and he would go from office to office in the Directorate of Budget. And if he found somebody working, he would say, "You and your supervisor will be in my office on Monday morning and explain why what you are doing,
Oh, my.
couldn't be done in 5 days."
Yeah,
So, in
yeah,
any event, yeah, he was a great guy. So Then I was fortunate and was able to get off to a new and a great assignment, and that was in West Berlin, Germany. And I emphasize West Berlin because it was in those days. And it was an organization that, again, an intelligence site. Half the people in Berlin worked for one intelligence agency or another.
Oh, wow.
On one side of the wall or the other. That probably is a little bit facetious.
Interesting.
But there were an awful lot of spies and.
Keep going
and
around
then-
in trench coats and
yeah,
hats.
good, clean intelligence people like me, overt and so forth, but others were not quite so overt. And I worked at a place called Marienfeld, which was built on one of the rubble piles from the Second World War.
Ooh.
And we were right on the wall, so in the morning when I would go into work, I would, see the glint on the binoculars of the East German
The sentries?
guards.
The sentries?
Sentries
Yeah,
up in
yeah.
their towers.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was a great place because it's where it's happening, It was truly the kind of place that somebody who was in my business would really want to go because, as I'll note later, there are other places you could go, but Berlin was great, it's because that was a happening place. So after that, I went to the other one, which was Osan Air Base in Korea.
Oh, gee.
And
Wow.
And I was an operations officer in Osan, and there we had the North Koreans to contend with, and some proximity to China as well.
Yeah.
And so, good, fascinating place to be in the 84, 86 timeframe. Following that, I came back to the States to Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, not in the Strategic Air Command, but in the Intelligence Command. And this was the first time that I was given the chance to be a commander of a unit. And I was, and interesting, it was also a flying unit. We would fly in the back of RC-135, still flying them today, which are intelligence collection aircraft. Basically a modified 707, heavily modified 707. And I can't say, I don't think, where it was we flew, but we had aircraft that were in Europe. We had them stationed in Asia. We had ours stationed in the United States, so draw your own conclusions there. And that was the first place, the only place that I received an air medal, because which was at that point in time reserved for people who were in aerial combat. If somebody is watching you and taking aim at you, it qualified. So I'll say no more about that, but it was an experience. Then I went from Berlin to a place called Metro Tango, which was in Germany, West Germany again, at Hahn Air Base, outside of Hahn Air Base, on the Hunsrück, the way out west part of Germany. And I was the commander of an organization that worked with TR-1, which were U-2 type aircraft that had, what shall I call it? They had, again, signals intelligence collection. They had photographic intelligence collection, all kinds of nifty stuff, stuck on board that airplane. And while there was no way of processing anything on board the aircraft, it was just the bus driver up there who was driving it around at altitude. Collecting, yeah. And basically was being told where to fly by the enlisted guys on the ground. So that was all good. We were the people that would intercept the data and deal with it in one way or the other. And it was at this time then that we had the fall of the wall. And I was there at Metro Tango from 89 to 91. And so following my experience there in West Germany, when it ceased to be West Germany, I went back to Berlin.
Oh, wow.
This time, my third commander spot. I'd been the commander of Metro Tango with the TR-1 as well. went back to Berlin, and that was immediately upon the unification of Germany.
What a place to be.
Oh, it was at a fascinating time to be there. I had been there clearly the first time when the wall was up,
Yeah.
very much occupied. And then when we went back the second time, Veronica, of course, and the growing family were all with us, with me. Went back there, and the wall had come down, and it was absolutely fascinating to see the difference that was taking place in Germany. East Berlin had been at one point the showplace of the Warsaw Pact. And yet it was depressingly grim and gray and dark, whereas West Berlin was artificially bright and flashy to the extreme. You could tell the difference of then and now, because now the people of East Berlin were able to drive into the West, into West Berlin and West Germany for that matter, and they would come across in their Trabants. Trabant is the name of a manufacturer of cars, or cars that were made in Eastern Germany. And the fuel was something akin to kerosene. The vehicles were in part made out of wood, pressed wood. Yeah, and so to see those
Driving into
West Germany, West Berlin, alongside and then competing for space with the West Berliners in their Mercedes, the
Yeah,
big,
sure.
what we used to call barn burners because they were terribly powerful things.
Yeah.
It was just, a different world. And so at the time then, my role changed, and I needed to change the mindset of the organization to now it's something new and something different. We're finished here, so now it's a matter of drawing down the command, the same command that I've been a part of, this time though going back as the commander with the job of bringing things to conclusion. And making sure that the people who had worked there so diligently for decades that still remained were given good follow-on assignments and were taken care of. So
Wow.
it was an
A
experience.
lot of responsibility.
Both building up an organization as I later did, and drawing one down as I was now doing. So we had quite a number of folks. Then I came back to San Antonio. Everybody in the Air Force spends some time in San Antonio. That's where the home of the Air Force.
Yeah.
Came back and we're good. Came back to San Antonio, and I was the assistant director for operations at the command level. So it was a major command, and there I was from '92 to '93. Did that, and then we had a real hard-driving general, officer, commander, and we were making things move. And so we were standing up a new type of organization, and the first of these belonged to the Air Force. Well, it was a multi-service operation. It was the Air Force that ran it, and it was a regional SIGINT operations center. We were getting to the point where we were able to do things more remotely and did not require as many people in place. And so I stood up the first of those regional operations centers, the RSOC, in San Antonio in 1992. And it was an Army organization, Navy organization, Marine Corps organization, Air Force, and Canadians.
It's a lot of coordinating.
Yeah, but they were all good folks. And so did that for a couple of years, stood things up, and it was an experience. Then I was pulled out of that fairly quickly because one of my contemporaries, who was the commander of one of our entities in Colorado, had a stroke And he needed to be replaced more than I needed to be, continuing an operation that I'd gotten 2 years underway.
Yeah.
And so I went to Aurora, Colorado, to a place that was called, euphemistically, the Aerospace Data Facility. And I think I can now say it was both a